living on the edge. It's the only way he lives. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is the Living Daylights. Welcome to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy facts, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And today we are returning to James Bond. Continuing our completely out of order coverage of the Bond movies, we are going with The Living Daylights, which, Zach, I believe is the last film that you haven't seen.
Yes, This is the last James Bond movie that I had not seen.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
It was disappointing to see it end on a low light.
What? We'll get into it. All right. This is the 1987 Timothy Dalton film, his first film as James Bond. He only had two, this and License to Kill, which was the first James Bond film that we covered, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
Ending his tenure with his first film here, and also, I guess, with, all the Bond films now you've seen, and now you can, how much do you actually remember of all of them?
Very little.
Okay.
Well, of course, some are more memorable than others, but I definitely remember nothing about Octopussy, just to pull one out of the midair.
That is an interesting one that we will cover at some point, but a lot of brown face, we'll just say.
Again?
Oh, it's
or maybe for the first time?
No. Well, I mean, I guess you only live twice as Yellowface with Bond, but yeah.
We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about The Living Daylights, which I looked up in between our last discussion about it, and the term The Living Daylights refers to someone's eyes, as in, I'm going to scare the living daylights out of them.
I actually had no idea and never thought about it. Okay.
Well, you certainly heard that expression before, but
mostly from James Bond.
Oh, really? It's weird to have it removed from that expression.
Fair enough.
It's like the term the whole kettle caboodle.
Mm-hmm.
You hear the word caboodle without that. It's really weird. It doesn't belong.
So the movie is based on, in part, the short story by Ian Fleming, which was one of, I think it was the last of his collection of short stories. It was compiled posthumously after he died in 1964. If I'm correct. The book that it's compiled in is called Octopussy and the Living Daylights, speaking of Octopussy. And I did read it beforehand. It is a very short story. It's actually, and we'll get into where it comes into the story.
Octopussy and the Living Daylights sounds like a Roald Dahl novel.
I could see that. So, Zach, why don't you take us in with our IMDb plot synopsis?
Okay, James Bond is sent to investigate a KGB policy to kill all enemy spies and uncovers an arms deal that potentially has global major ramifications. And I'm pretty sure a lot of that is wrong.
Mostly right, but we'll get to it.
Didn't IMDb also mess up a plot summary of one of our movies? I seem to remember that.
I'm sure it did at some point, yeah. I mean, these are all user submitted, so yeah, who knows?
You get what you pay for.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of this free podcast now. Anyway, so we start with a briefing from M. He's briefing a bunch of 00 agents. And I don't actually name them. They only name 004 on screen, but I think the other one is 002. Mm-hmm. So he's getting a briefing. Apparently there's a training mission on the Rock of Gibraltar. And then the back of his office opens up and we find out they're in a cargo plane. All his papers fly out.
Yeah, I thought the office in a plane was funny, and I also wanted to point out that the exercise is against the Special Air Service, or the SAS.
SAS, yep.
Yeah, one of the most feared real-life British commando units, as opposed to the 007s, which are not real, as far as we know.
The 300 agents parachute out of the back of the cargo plane.
Yeah, the scenery looked really good here.
Yeah,
really good.
It looked like a real skydiving, and it was a real skydiving, probably with just stunt doubles, though. Let me actually, have you been skydiving before?
Absolutely not. And I'll be happy if I never do.
This sounds like when I asked you if you'd been in a helicopter before.
I didn't have as strong feelings about, I would ride in a helicopter, but if I never ride in a helicopter, I'll not feel like I missed out on anything.
Those two things were on my bucket list of things I have to do once in my life. And I did. Actually, I went for my cousin's 21st birthday. He's decided, instead of getting really drunk, we're going to get really high.
Wow. Can't get much higher than that, I suppose.
No, but it was a lot of fun. I did a tandem jump. It was in Hawaii, so great scenery below me, speaking of good scenery. Mm-hmm. And it's a rush. It is. I would do it again, I think.
Would you go bungee jumping?
Weirdly enough, I would not do bungee jumping, but I would do skydiving again.
Skydiving is probably safer.
Yeah. They parachute onto the Rock of Gibraltar. 002 gets stuck in a tree, and I see that they're using basically paintballs.
Yes, that's right. And these badass SAS agents who are so feared the world over just walk up to him and shoot him with a paint gun and say,
Well, to be
"You're
fair,
dead."
the guy was just in a tree.
That's a very
It's like
common
not like he could
paintball.
really do anything else. So like, yeah, all right, I see you. Yeah, I'm just gonna shoot you with a paintball. 004 is trying to climb up, and as he's climbing up, there's someone also dressed in black at the top of his rope, and we're like, who is this? Because he's not one of the 00 agents.
I was having trouble keeping track because we saw 3 jump down,
Yep.
and then there was 4 on the ground.
Mhm.
And so you're like, what? What's happening?
This guy gets shot by the SAS with a paint, and then he whips out a real gun and shoots the SAS guy, and then cuts the rope of 004. And as 004 falls, this is when we get our first glimpse of Bond. And so that's our introduction to the new James Bond.
Well, I would say this whole opening is
But I
our
mean, like
introduction.
the first time we see his face, really, like
That's
as opposed
correct.
to the first time we see Brosnan's face, it's upside down in a toilet.
Yep. And the first time we see Sean Connery, where he's just sitting there at the Baccarat table.
Don't just say just sitting there. He's sitting there looking the coolest in his tuxedo.
But we're not going to repeat that again.
All right. So, first there's a weird scene with a monkey.
It's not a weird scene. I would describe it as a jump scare. Because
fair enough.
It's supposed to be startling, and I was like, wow, that's the one thing that James Bond movies really needed was jump scares.
Oh, I thought you were going to say monkeys.
Said that. No, there's been monkeys before in James Bond movies.
I know. Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah, and I don't like monkeys, so I was happy.
I'm sorry. What?
I don't like monkeys. They're annoying.
Why don't you like what?
You.
What? Never go to Costa Rica. Then there are lots of monkeys there.
Thanks for the heads up. I appreciate that.
But for everyone else who is normal, go to Costa Rica. It's a beautiful place.
There are dozens of us. Dozens of us monkey haters.
All right. Anyway, so Bond gets the attacker.
Well, basically, yeah, it's like the Indiana Jones truck fight where the guy's driving and Bond is trying to get him, and this 80s synthesizer music plays over the whole thing.
I love it. I would say it's a tie between this and View to a Kill, which is the movie precede this, that has like the most 80s soundtrack. And I love it. I love it. My favorite part here is when the SAS guard at the board at the
it's like
entrance.
A checkpoint.
Yeah, checkpoint. Thank you. Checkpoint. Why did I think of checkpoint? He shoots at them with the paintballs, and he goes, "Hang on, you're dead."
Yeah, I seem to remember you quoting that from something else.
Probably. I mean, it is. I don't know why that line sticks with me. It's just so funny. But yeah,
he's so befuddled, as only British people can be. I think when he's shooting the windshield with the paint, it was like instinct. When a car chases him, you just shoot it with whatever you have.
Yeah. So the Jeep chases through a bunch of streets, does crash into stuff, almost crashes into a family, goes over a cliff, and Bond uses his parachute, which he had on from before, or I guess his backup chute from before, to get out of there. But it gets tattered up with like the flames and explosions from the Jeep, and so he has to land quickly, and he spots a yacht below him.
Okay, I have a quick thing here. I have a note where I was like, okay, the bad guy dies without telling us why he was there or what was going on. Is it a plot hole, or are they going to explain it later? And it turns out they did explain it later.
And there do see, like, I didn't mention it, but, you know, before he kills 004, he puts, like, this little note on a carabiner and, like, slides it down to him.
Yes, that's right. And I'm used to these openings in James Bond movies being kind of like the beginning of a Star Trek episode. I know I always bring up Star Trek, but it's often completely self-contained and not related to the rest of the movie. Am I remembering that correctly? I'm trying to think of
the last time. So obviously, for all of the Daniel Craigs, all of those have been those pre-credit scenes have been connected. The Brosnans, let's see, Die Another Day is connected.
GoldenEye,
World Is Not Enough is connected. Yes, GoldenEye is connected because that's when you meet Uramov and Alec Trevelyan.
Okay, so maybe some are connected more than others.
No, I want to think when the last one that's completely disconnected is. It's probably into the Roger Moore era. View to a Kill. What was the pre-credits for View to a Kill? I don't actually remember.
Let's try to remember to put that on social media and see if people want to weigh in. Help us remember.
It is probably in the Roger Moore era of, I think it might be Octopussy. Yeah. Yeah, it's brought up again. Yeah, he lands on the yacht, and there's, of course, a beautiful woman there, and he like takes her. She's on the phone with her friend, saying, "Oh, there's no one interesting here. There's only playboys and tennis pros." He grabs the phone and is like, "She'll call you back," and it's the giant '80s phone, which I love.
Bond was pretty cool here. Timothy Dalton is good at the commando, secret agent, being an action hero stuff. I'm not sure he's so good at the romance stuff. We can discuss
Agree
it.
to disagree, but okay. Yeah, he calls MI6, says what's going on, and I'll report in an hour.
I'm sorry, he doesn't say what's going on. He's like, I will report in an hour.
That's what
he doesn't say, there's this rogue dude here who killed 2 of our agents, and I killed him. Something went with the exercise.
He just checks in basically and says, I'm still alive, and I'll report in an hour. And then the woman gives her champagne and says, better make that 2.
I did like the way he was delivering these lines. It felt very professional and like a secret agent. Just the content was a little bit strange, as I mentioned that before, and that was a good line, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so then we go into the title sequence, which are super 80. The song is by a-ha, who is most famous for that song, Take On Me.
That's right. And I noticed in the credits, Joe Don Baker and John Rhys Davies.
Yep. They are both in here. I don't actually remember too much about the credits, other than I think there was some like tumbling in there. There was like a gun firing out the words. This is, I would say, not one of the more memorable title sequences.
So something I noticed about this movie is that I get the impression, and I don't know all the background info, that with the new Bond, they had to make it clear that, yes, this is a James Bond movie, and all of the elements are going to be there, whether we like it or not. And for this opening credits, we got women swimming in bathing suits, and we've got guns. And that is what a James Bond opening needs.
Except for Casino Royale.
Well, with Casino Royale, it was the changing up as well, where women in bathing suits swimming around the opening credits probably didn't play as well.
So we go to Bratislava, where there's an orchestra performance. We see Bond there with head of Station V Vienna, whose name is Saunders. And he's very snooty. Bond notices a girl with a cello. Saunders is like, focus on the mission, not on the ladies.
There's a lot of telling about who James Bond is. There's a lot of saying, James Bond is the ladies' man. James Bond is the best. James Bond can do anything. You know what I mean? Have you noticed this?
No, I think it's partially, as you said, they have to reestablish that, all right, this is still James Bond, even though it's not Roger Moore, because this is his first film. Dalton, that is. They just need to hammer home some of those things for people who maybe are like, I don't know who this guy is. I don't like him. Where's Roger Moore?
Yeah, some things never change. So Bond at this part has a tactical tuxedo that quick changes.
I love it. Yeah, so they're bringing someone across the border. He turns his dinner jacket into a sniper outfit. So he has folds up the collar, folds it over, and then like a part goes across his collar, so it's all black.
And they say that this guy is defecting, and he asked for Bond specifically because quote, he's the best. So then I'm like, a lot of people in this movie seem to know who James Bond is, and his reputation has preceded itself. Which, of course, the classic joke is that in every James Bond movie, he's a terrible spy because as soon as he shows up, the bad guys always know who he is. But I think by this point in his career, it feels real that his reputation has preceded itself.
Do not mention the 3 words that I hate about James Bond.
I was not even thinking about that.
Okay, but if they're going with this as the same person, he's encountered the Russians so many times. The previous head of KGB, General Gogol, who appears later in the film. So it's, he's had many encounters. So of course they would know who James Bond is.
I love my continuity and living worlds. So anything that helps with that is great.
Yeah. Bond asks, what's the plan for getting him out once we get him across? And he gives him the line, which I love. And I think I use this a lot. Section 26, paragraph 5. That information is on a need to know basis.
Yeah, but Bond gets him back for that later.
We see Koskov, who's the person who's coming across, sneaking out of the bathroom. And as they're like watching him go out of the bathroom, they're like, what's he waiting for? And we see there's a sniper on the top floor trying to shoot at Koskov. And it's the girl with the cello.
And I was like, oh my goodness. We have a cello player assassin. That is just so typical James Bond. And I thought
Wow.
we were going to use her like sexiness against him, like in GoldenEye, but I was wrong.
Did I ever tell you actually I used to play the cello? So I
No,
had
you
some
didn't.
notes. Yes, no, I played for about 6 years in high school. So I have notes on her cello playing, but we'll get to them when we actually see her play.
All right.
He has the target reticle pointed right at her head, and he moves it so that he hits the gun instead.
So the impression that I got, and let
Yeah.
me know if I'm wrong, is that he misses because he thinks she's hot. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct.
Because I seem to remember later he's like, "Oh, I didn't actually think that she was going to kill him."
We'll get to it.
Does
We'll
that
get
sound
to it.
right? Okay.
That's not correct, but you are thinking like Saunders did.
Well, like I said, Bond's reputation precedes him about a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. Koskov gets across the street, gets over to them, and Bond says that he's scrubbed Saunders' original plan because it was just really to take him across in the trunk of the car, which is a terrible plan.
That's right. But I do think it's funny that Bond has this whole elaborate operation, like ready to go, presumably just for this general, because they say later, you're the first one to go, which is like some Han Solo style humor, which I appreciated.
Yeah. So the new plan is they're going to get him across in the pipeline to the west, the Trans-Siberian Pipeline. So they have their man there, Rosie, and they put Koskov in a pig, which is a scouring pug that is designed to clear out the pipeline. It's fitted so that this one can actually fit, get a man inside there.
Oh, so that's real. I thought they just made it up for the movie.
I mean, I know that scouring plugs are a thing, but I don't know if they actually got anyone across in this fashion.
Oh, presumably not. But like, there's a thing that exists that can go through a pipeline super quick. Is the point?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's supposed to go that quick, but yes.
Probably not. But yeah.
Rosie distracts her supervisor with her feminine wiles, shall we say?
That's right. Go ahead and say it. You know you want to. It's funny that recently, and by recently I mean a few months ago, we had our Global James Bond Day draft game where our friend of the pod, Sarah, said that James Bond movies, basically as long as Bond girls exist, James Bond movies will be sexist / misogynist. And I've been doing a little bit of thinking about that since then, and we'll have more to say about this Bond girl. But for now, I'll say that this scene is very much a reminder that this movie is a product of the 80s, which is not the most progressive time for gender relations.
No, it was not. Koskov goes across the border through the pipeline and is met in Austria by Q, and he gets a Harrier jet out.
Yeah, the Harrier jet has what they call a VTOL system, which stands for vertical takeoff and landing.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool, but a little bit unnecessary for the purposes of the plot.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, how else are you going to get him? Like, if you're getting him out by a plane, there's no runway.
Whatever. I mean, this whole thing bugged me only because it ended up being pointless for the overall plot of the movie, because he defects and then he just goes right back. So it's like, come on.
It's not pointless, though. Well, you know what? Let's get to it. Bond meets Saunders at the border, like you said, too, and, this is where, he criticizes Bond for not killing her because, in Saunders' opinion, because Saunders thought that Bond thought the girl was beautiful. But the reason Bond didn't kill her is because he knew that she wasn't a professional. In his words, she didn't know one end of the gun from the other.
Yeah, but that's exactly what they would want you to think, Bond.
No, I'm not even gonna.
If you're a killer, you don't want to look like a killer. Seems obvious to me. Also around here is the title of the movie is dropped, but I don't remember the context.
Oh, wow. May or may not be in my favorite quote, so we'll save it for then. So we go back to MI6, and Q is going with Bond, going over the list of all the different female KGB assassins. So where we meet our new Moneypenny.
Did you notice anything notable about one of those female assassins?
The one who strangles people with their legs.
Yeah.
Xenia Onatopp. Yeah. Well, it was not Xenia, but a predecessor to Xenia Onatopp, presumably.
Or a different code name.
Yeah, could be.
But yeah, Moneypenny is there as well.
She's a more mousy sort of Moneypenny than some of the others.
Yeah, I was told not to say that because it's mean.
Oh?
I always thought it was just neutral, but apparently it's like insulting. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Also around this part is we meet the Ghetto Blaster.
Oh,
God. Being up to the 80s. I like the 80s music that came out of it, though. It's better than the music on the boombox in The Undiscovered Country, or The Voyage Home, rather.
Oh, speaking of another 80s, yes.
Mm-hmm. The scene
I hate you, and I degrade you.
I'm not sure that would have been quite the contrast if they put it in this movie. But then the scene ends with the sound on the subtitles of, quote, slapping buttocks.
Oh, you noticed that too, did you?
I did notice that.
I've seen this movie many a time. But usually I don't have the subtitles on, but and yeah, oh god.
That's a new one for James Bond. He's supposed to be classier than that.
I assume you're not remembering in Goldfinger. Say goodbye to Felix. Man talk. Slap.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, no, that's a big thing. It's not new for Bond, but it is new to have that subtitle there.
Mm-hmm. So it was pretty memorable, I dare say.
Yeah, actually, and the other thing about this scene is that he does ask Moneypenny to look for any record of a woman cellist in the Bratislava Conservatory. This guy running who's pretending to be American, he knocks into a milkman and is, "Oh, sorry," in a very exaggerated American accent, and then he kills the milkman and uses his headphone wires as a garrote. He's got like a Walkman on him all the time.
Yeah, it's super 80s Walkman right out of Back to the Future.
Or, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, it's more Guardians of the Galaxy, that's fair.
That's our first sign of this assassin. And we see Bond driving up in his Aston Martin V8 Vantage. I've actually seen this car back in, 2014 or 15 or so when I went to London. They have this big exhibit called Bond in Motion over in Covent Gardens in London. And they had like all of the James Bond cars, including this one and this one with all of its gadgets out.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it does have a lot of good gadgets.
The cello.
Oh, yes, the eponymous cello.
And so I'll post those photos on our social media. Actually, I visited a few places related to this movie that I'll talk about when we get to them.
Okay.
Brought some foie gras, some caviar, and champagne for Koskov because he does not like the food at the safe house. Which we should say, the safe house is like a mansion somewhere in the English countryside. So I'm sure the food would be actually good there, and he's just a picky Russian.
No, it's because they're British. Everybody knows the British have bad food.
I like British food.
I mean, some British food is good, but they needed that chicken tikka masala badly from the Indian immigrants.
Oh.
Whatever, they know I'm right.
Oh, man. Oh, boy. And there goes. You know that the UK is our second highest country in terms of downloads than the US?
Well, they can write in and tell me how wrong I am. And if they're willing to send me recommendations for British food, I'd be happy to try it.
Okay. All right. I mean, I do like a steak and kidney pie.
I like fish and chips, as I may have mentioned. So M is meeting with this general. It's a different general. There's too many generals in this movie. Oh, no, it's the same general. Is meeting with M and talking about the plot of the movie.
Was Koskov a general?
Yes, he was.
Really? Oh, okay. I knew that we have General Gogol, we have General Pushkin.
Mm-hmm.
Was he?
No, I think he is General Gogol.
No, General Gogol is later. Is former head of the KGB.
Yeah.
Georgie.
Georgie or Georgie. Hey there, Georgie girl. But whoever he is.
Georgy Koskov.
Yeah. He's talking about this plan called Death to Spies.
Smierć Szpionom.
Yep. Which is
Lieutenant
a callback.
General.
Oh, Lieutenant General.
Okay. Oh, yes, a general. So it's like a lieutenant commander. You call him commander. Yeah. All right. So yes, you're right. He is a general.
Yes, this plant is, I guess, coming back like from the past, because wasn't the real life one in like the 50s?
Yes, we will talk about that in our Spy Fact versus Spy Fiction.
Okay, so basically, it's like that episode of Get Smart where where the spies on both sides are getting attacked, and the idea is it's going to start a war somehow, and then it won't be a nuclear war because then everyone will die. It's just a normal war.
Well, not Pushkin. Koskov, there are too many generals. Koskov says, God forbid this might lead to nuclear war.
Oh, so they want us to raise tensions. They don't want a nuclear war. They're just not thinking through the ramifications of what they're doing.
Yeah, so as this is all going on, the assassin from before has now disguised himself as the milkman. He goes into the safe house, kills a cook, and fights off an agent, and then impersonates the agent and says there's a gas leak.
the kitchen fight is really good for
Yeah.
a fight that
Yeah.
doesn't have James Bond in it.
But it has our lead henchman, basically.
Yes, that's correct. I appreciated it though that they let someone who isn't James Bond do
Mhm.
something cool. So again, in Star Trek, it's not only Star Trek, but a lot of other things do this where everyone who isn't the main character is like an idiot in order to make the main character look good. And I really don't like that. I also like at one point, Necros is the name of the assassin, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, he uses an exploding milk bottle.
Oh, yes. So here's my question about that, though.
Uh-huh.
He didn't have the milk bottles before.
Mm-hmm. Well,
He
actually, how
didn't.
do you know that? Maybe he was intending to disguise himself as a milkman all
I'm
along.
sure he was. Yeah, but he was running. And that's
Uh-huh.
when so he didn't have all those on him when he was running. And then he attacks the milkman.
He pulled it from like an invisible pocket.
Now, actually, my theory is that he had explosives on him and he put them
Mm.
into the milk bottle.
Waterproof explosives,
Yeah.
milk-proof
Well, I mean,
explosives.
maybe he emptied out the milk. Who knows?
Yeah, he's a
Yes,
milk-themed supervillain, ready to go.
Pretty much. So he impersonates the agent, says there's gas leak, finds Koskov, and when Koskov sees him, he's like, KGB.
Yeah. Doesn't he also say they have a termination warrant on me or something like that?
Yeah, he does say that. So, yeah, so he gets taken in a helicopter. Necros disguises himself as a doctor, and there's like one guy, the one agent who's there guarding Koskov is like threatened at gunpoint, and he's the one witness to tell the story, basically.
Yeah, he escapes really easily. Almost too easily. But then there's actually a good explanation for why it was so easy, which I like.
Yeah, so back at MI6, M and the Minister of Defense are meeting with Bond. They issue a termination warrant for General Pushkin because now they believe that this whole Spionem operation is real.
Yeah, and it's totally believable. And all the story totally checks out. And in other James Bond movies, past and future, Russian generals had just been the bad guy. Maybe not behind it all, but certainly just a straight up bad guy.
Here's the thing I thought about, though. Anytime you have these Russian generals as bad guys, they're always like a break-off or rogue Russian general. They're never working directly underneath the orders of the Politburo or anyone.
That's right. Obvious why?
Because you don't want to piss off the Russians.
Yes, and you know what it's like? It's like Star Trek again. How many times can I bring up Star Trek? In the classic Star Trek movies,
yes,
they're trying to make peace with the Klingons. So Christopher Lloyd, Christopher Plummer, what is it with Christophers? Yeah, the dude in the Final Frontier that nobody wants to remember because he's terrible. Those are all break-off rogue Klingons too. They're not acting under orders from their government.
No. I mean, even first time we meet up with the Russians and From Russia with Love, what is her name? Lottie Lenya is the actress. Rosa Klebb, Colonel Rosa Klebb. Russian, but now working for Spectre. But it boggles my mind because everyone was, oh yeah, the Russians are the bad guys. In Bond movies, no, actually, they might be Russian, but they're always like break-off rogue Russians.
Yeah, a Russian is a bad guy, not the Russians.
Exactly.
Very important distinction.
Anyways, so this is where we get what revealed what's on that carabiner that was on 007 or 004's body, and it said on it Spionem.
Right. I'm going to let you keep saying it so I don't have to. So Bond gets some gadgets, including knockout gas and explosives, and the way the explosive activates is with a wolf whistle.
Well, yes.
So,
but the gas activates by whistling the first bars of Rue Britannia.
Isn't that just an encapsulation of James Bond? Patriotism and womanizing. The wolf whistle bugged me. And explosives, yeah. Well, the wolf whistle bugged me because, again, I think Bond is classier than that.
Right.
Like, I don't think it fits
Hugh
James
doesn't think Bond is classier than that. And Hugh is the one who programmed it.
Yeah, but the writers wrote the movie.
Okay.
So
we also have this couch gag where
yes.
one of the texts. Remember, what movie was it? I don't remember.
I think it was Casino Royale or Get Smart.
And you were like saying, no, this is too ridiculous for a Q scene. It's like, no, the Q scenes are pretty out there in terms of the humor. So here's an example of that.
Yeah, it's a man-eating couch. It's kind of like a mimic from Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Where it eats a guy.
So we also find out from Moneypenny that she found the cellist. Her name is Kara Milovi. And now Bond wants tickets to Tangier via Bratislava. And I looked at the map. There's no good... no good way to make that route.
Kara's name is easy to remember because it's like Supergirl.
Sure. Okay.
And I gotta say, she is not one of the better Bond girls. Can we agree on that?
Boo you.
You can agree
Boo.
with any of my opinions about this movie?
No.
Apparently
Kara
not.
is great. I like Kara.
Okay.
And not just because she's a cellist. Cellists need
Oh,
more
I
love.
see. Mm.
Bond goes to Bratislava, sees Kara performing, and then she leaves the conservatory with her cello case and gets on a trolley.
And what did this remind you of?
I don't know what it reminded me of.
Night and
Did
Day.
not remind me of Night and Day, no.
Our male hero creepily stalking the female lead
Oh,
on
here we go.
public transportation.
Yes, but at least in this case, there's an actual good reason and not just because she had nothing to do with the plot. Kara is taken by the KGB, but leaves the cello case. And actually, there to seemingly conduct part of the interrogation is General Pushkin.
Yep.
So Bond takes the trolley to the end of the line and takes the cello case into the bathroom and opens it in a stall. He finds that the gun that she had shooting at Koskov with is inside the cello case.
Okay, why is it inside the cello case?
Because she was trying to get rid of it.
So she brought it with her from Bratislava all the way to wherever we are.
Bratislava.
We're
still in Bratislava.
We're still in Bratislava.
She's never left.
Well, then she's had a lot of time to get rid of it, and it still doesn't make sense.
She is not a professional. She doesn't know what she's doing here.
Well, it's lucky for her that they didn't take that cello case when they arrested her, because then she would have been caught red-handed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very good for her. But when he looks at the gun, he sees there are only blanks in the gun.
By the way, as we discussed before, blanks are still dangerous. Safety
still
tip.
Dangerous, but if you're firing at a long range there,
then it's fine.
Yeah. And he also sees her address inside the case. So again, proof she is not a professional. She doesn't know what she's doing because you wouldn't leave the gun in a case that had your home address in it.
Unless that's what they want you to think.
Oh God, stop.
Also, I guess she lives in Bratislava then.
Yes, she is in Bratislava. It's part of the Soviet bloc. So she goes home, and the KGB are still following her. Her place has been ransacked, and we see Bond there. Has the cello case, but he says he dropped the gun in the river.
Well, why didn't she think of that?
Because she's not a professional. She's never been wrapped up in this sort of stuff. Even though she's dating a KGB general.
She's probably like, I don't want to know.
Pretty much. Yes.
I guess you can clearly tell that there were no true crime podcasts in the 80s. She would have listened to one of them and would have been able to get away with that.
Oh, boy. Anyway, so I don't think we'd actually mentioned it until this point, but Koskov was her boyfriend. Bond pretends that he's a friend of Koskov's and that he's there to pick up Kara. And so they head to Vienna to trick the KGB. She gets into a phone booth with the cello case and does a quick change and drives away with Bond.
Yeah, basically what we're getting at here is that Koskov pretended to defect just so he could get kidnapped and come back. And we will learn later it gets more convoluted than that. And
not come back, though. He's not here. He's not in Bratislava.
That's true.
Yeah.
Also, Bond lies about knowing where he is.
Yep.
Oh, that James Bond.
He's following a lead. He's trying to get all the information he can.
No, I mean, it's fine. Bond does kind of scummy stuff. I'm just making an observation.
Okay. Before they leave for Vienna, she says, I have to get my cello at the conservatory. He's like, no, absolutely not. But then you see her loading the cello into the back seat of the Aston. The back seats of Astons are tiny, really. So there's no way they could fit a cello in a hard case in the back seat.
Better that than the trunk. I bet there's more space in the back seat than there. It is
I don't know. I've transported a cello in a trunk before, and that's fine.
And how about an Aston Martin trunk? Maybe they're really small. It is funny how they have to keep dealing with this cello. It's also kind of annoying, but it's also funny.
No, I love the cello.
Back and forth. Well, you're biased. Everybody write in and see if you agree with me, you non-cello players.
And some police find them. We get an upgrade from the DB5's tire slasher, which is a laser.
Yeah, this whole chase scene is really good, and it goes on and on and on.
So goes. There's a laser cuts through the car, and then when they hit the brake, the top half of the car goes off. There's a roadblock. They launch a rocket. So he's got some gadgets in this car, which I liked.
And he uses them too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a rocket to blow through the roadblock. They go out onto the ice. And this scene, though, when he goes onto the ice and the tire blows out, and he uses the rim of the tire to cut a hole in the ice around the police chasing them, and you just see them slowly sinking into the ice. First of all, if the ice was that thin, they would have crashed through anyways. And what am I thinking of? What's the inner part of the tire?
It's so funny. We've had this conversation before.
We have?
Yeah.
Oh,
It was
and
trying
Get
to
Smart when we were talking about, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember what it's called this time. It's called
What is
a
it?
rim. It's called a
A
tire
rim.
rim.
Thank you. But the rim would not be that sharp enough to actually cut through it if it was, thick enough to drive on. And that's the only thing I'm gonna say
That's the only thing you find unrealistic about this whole movie.
about this chase.
About this scene, yeah.
All the others going to be explained by gadgets and Q branch and all that stuff. But that is the one where I draw the line. They have outrigger skis on the thing that come out, and there's tire spikes on the remaining tires. There's a rocket engine they use to go up a ramp.
Great, it's like Batman.
But then they go down a hill, get into a crash, skis come off. They have to self-destruct it.
Yeah, that was great. The self-destruct button.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no self-destruct will ever be as cool as Star Trek 3 when they're like Kirk, Code, Alpha, Gamma, Charlie, Destruct. Really like that scene. I don't know why. I think it's really good.
Scene. It's a good scene. With no mode of transportation now, they end up using the cello case as a sled, and he's using the cello to navigate. I loved it. But then a bullet hole gets shot in the cello, and I'm like, oh no.
Gives a character. So this reminded me of the Super Mario Brothers movie when they're slipping through the pipes on the mattress.
No, I did not think of that. I remember it, but I did not think of it.
Yeah, this is so schlocky. It was so great. I love the part where he says sorry to some people as they cruise by them.
No, he said sorry to
to Kara.
Kara when the cello got shot.
Oh, whatever.
And then as they approach the border to Vienna, he's a wave this as we pass by, and it says passport, and they wave it. And they're sliding underneath the partition and throw the cello over it, and then we've nothing to declare, just the cello. Yeah,
it was very silly.
I love it.
The rest of the movie is very serious in contrast.
Yeah. I think it's really because I know Dalton wanted to bring it back to the more Fleming-esque, the darkest parts of the series, but coming right after View to Kill, which is one of the more silly of Roger Moore's, they couldn't quite find that balance between the silly and the serious.
Okay, it sounds like a criticism of this movie, but it's hard to do.
Yeah,
so
it is. Yeah,
no shade on director John Glenn. I just noticed that on IMDb.
Yes, he's actually directed a number of James Bond films. I think he has directed the most James Bond films, actually, and it's Glenn with one N, unlike the astronaut.
Yes.
Anyway, so we go over to Tangier. And we see this camera taking photos of Pushkin, and in the background of the cameras, we see signals going to a yacht, which we'll come back to. So Pushkin is entering a compound, and in the compound, in a hallway, are these statues of historical military leaders, but they're all in the form of Joe Don Baker.
Yes, Joe Don Baker. I know him from the Mystery Science Theater episode Mitchell, which if you have never seen it, it's great. It's one of the better Mystery Science Theater episodes. It's really funny. Joe Don Baker is the lead, and of course, he is also in GoldenEye.
And Tomorrow Never Dies.
Right, as an American agent. So I thought, silly me, that he was going to be the same character in this movie.
No. Nope.
So they're just whatever, who cares about the continuity? We'll have the same actor play two different roles.
Not the first time in James Bond.
Not the first time in a lot of things. Doctor Who is notorious for it.
True. Yeah, he's basically obsessed with military history, and Joe Don Baker plays Brad Whitaker, who's an American arms dealer.
Right.
And he's obsessed with military history. He says to Pushkin, who's answers, what do you think of, my hall of great military leaders? And Pushkin calls them all butchers, and Whitaker says, no, they trim the fat from the world. And I noticed one of them is Hitler.
That's true. That's a little bit much. I mean, he is a bad guy. Yeah. I don't know what you expect.
I don't. I'm just. So we had. I know Hitler. I saw Napoleon. Presumably Genghis Khan. I think was in there too.
There was at least one Roman centurion.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so what they're trying to do here is they're trying to make him seem like one of these megalomaniacal bad guys who wants to rule the world or change it. But first of all, Joe Don Baker is not a good choice for a character like that.
Okay.
It's very goofy, which can work for some James Bond villains, but not this one. But also, I think the idea what they're trying to do is he's an arms dealer, but he thinks of himself as
this great military
Hitler
leader.
Or Napoleon or whatever. So that's kind of a cool idea that they also never really fully fleshed out over the course of the movie.
And we find out here that, so Pushkin had ordered weapons from Whitaker, but wants to cancel the order. And we find out that he actually, like, Pushkin knows that Whitaker hasn't actually made any orders or done any deals yet, and also like brings up that he was expelled from West Point and actually never served as a soldier anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we see he has this like in his what I'm going to call his game room. Basically, he has all these like miniatures of military battles and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's a wannabe.
Yeah, very much so.
Which is kind of pathetic. No offense to any wannabes out there.
Okay. But yeah, so Pushkin tells Whitaker, I want my money back in however many days, and, whatever deal you're doing with Koskov, it's not going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to Vienna, where Bond and Kara are staying at the very fancy Schönbrunn Palace, which I visited on my honeymoon.
Intentionally?
Yes.
Was it because of this movie, I mean?
Yes.
Wow. This has been quite the honeymoon, I must say.
It was great. I mean, I saw this. I'll mention the other big place that I saw here. But so this whole palace is not, it was a summer palace of the Habsburg. Is it Habsburgs? Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Whichever the ruling class in Vienna. I used to remember all of this once, but it's been about almost 2 years now.
Mm-hmm. So in this scene, Bond drops the Universal Exports line.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
love it.
I understood that reference finally.
Find out, of course, now that the cello is a Stradivarius, which is
Right.
a very fancy and expensive stringed instrument.
So is Stradivarius a person or a company?
Yes, he was a person who made these things.
Because usually you hear Stradivarius violins, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess he made both.
Checks into the hotel, and apparently the concierge knows him because he's like, are your usual suite? And
Yo,
so he
stop stealing all of my favorite lines.
Sorry.
I don't have that many this time. I'm with you.
Okay. He buys a dress for Kara and gets tickets to the opera.
Mm-hmm. Because that's what James Bond loves to go to, apparently. He's seen it in other movies, right?
I mean, opera's fun. I went to opera in Vienna, not at the same opera house that they go to, a different opera house, actually, which is featured in a different spy movie.
Any other Washington, D.C. residents, I highly recommend Opera in the Outfield. Free showing every year.
We go over back to Tangier, and Koskov is lounging by the pool. Someone summons him and Nekros. They have to go report to Whitaker. Whitaker tells them that Pushkin wants his money back and doesn't think that the Brits are convinced that Pushkin is actually doing this shadow operation thing.
That's right. So they're going to kill another agent and get things moving here.
Get things moving. And if Bond doesn't kill Pushkin at the end of the week, then Nekros will do the job.
It's great how they explain their plot, just so the audience can figure out what's happening.
It's well done in a way, I think, that because otherwise you'd be complaining about, wait, I don't understand what this plot is.
It's true. I barely understood the plot of this movie. It was way more convoluted than most James Bond movies. Compared to Dr. No, this was like totally convoluted and crazy.
I mean, Dr. No is simply about toppling missiles.
It's funny that you say Dr. No is about toppling missiles, because as we discussed at the time, missiles like barely had anything to do with the actual movie. What I mean, though, is that for Dr. No, it's find the bad guy and kill him.
Oh.
As opposed to dealing with all of this crazy deception shenanigans.
You're on a spy movie podcast.
I know, right? I'm totally out of my depth, you can tell.
Anyway, so we go to the opera where Kara and Bond are watching. I believe it's Marriage of Figaro.
Okay.
We see Saunders there after the performance is over. He meets with Bond, recognizes Kara. Is like, wait, isn't that the girl with the cello? And no. It's helpful that we get layers of the plot as they're untangled.
It's coming so soon after Mission Impossible 1. I also think it would have been pretty funny if this were a funnier movie. If everywhere Kara goes, she drags her cello around with her. Like, it's behind them on the roller coaster. It's next to them in the opera.
You would not bring a Stradivarius on a roller coaster.
That's why it's funny.
Okay. So speaking of the Stradivarius, so he tells Saunders that the Stradivarius is called the Lady Rose. And so to investigate when it was purchased and how did Koskov get the money to purchase it. So Saunders checking on that. He also needs to get passport papers for Kara and says, all right, Saunders is, resistant. Bond forces him to do it and says, all right, meet at the Prater Cafe near the Ferris wheel.
Yeah, now that's the spy movies I know. Having meetings to plan more meetings.
Well, you need to do the task and then come back and meet again to do it.
Right. So, yeah, they go on a roller coaster. They go through the carnival. There's a part where Bond
cars. Yeah,
is really good at shooting. I like that. This is where we get our second and final jump scare.
Mm-hmm.
with some Halloween themed thing.
The haunted house, yes. And then
Yeah.
Kara says, "Take me on the wheel." So this is the other location I visited in Vienna related to
Oh,
this
yeah?
movie. We went on the Ferris wheel. I was hoping to get the same car number as they did, which was number 10. I don't remember which number I got, actually. I have photos of it, which, again, we'll post on our social media.
Did you notice any semen stains from Bond?
Okay, so here's the thing. I don't think they had sex in that thing.
I think they 100% did. I
Okay,
think that is
so-
what the movie is implying.
This is as good as time to bring it up as any. Did you
Uh-huh.
notice something about this movie?
I noticed that there was nudity in it. And by that, I mean nudity.
Yes, okay, there was that, and we'll get to it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. No, so this is in
Mhm.
the 80s. This is at the height of the AIDS epidemic,
Okay.
basically. So this is the reason why there's only one Bond girl in this movie.
There are
You
two.
only see Bond ever. We don't count the woman in the beginning.
Why not? She's a person.
She is a person, yes, but she is not a Bond girl, really. We don't even know her name. She doesn't have any part in the plot.
This can't be the only movie with one Bond girl. What about Goldeneye with Natalia?
Natalia Xenia Onatopp.
She's a bad guy. She's not
Well,
a Bond girl.
Also,
What?
and also the one in the very beginning. Well, she almost falls in the same category as the one on the yacht. The
Yes,
psychiatrist.
thank you. I also thought back in the 80s, AIDS only applied to gay people. That's what everyone thought.
At first, and then later it spread, and people realized, no, this can affect everyone.
I like the theory. I'm just not sure I
Not
buy
a
it.
theory.
It's fact.
It's pretty much, yeah, it is not completely confirmed, but yes, it is well known that this is the reason why there's only one Bond girl in this movie, is because it was during the AIDS epidemic.
Oh, interesting.
Going back to this scene, I think they were just making out. I don't think they had sex in there. They're kissing with all of their clothes on, and then when we come back to them later, they're still just kissing with their clothes on.
Well, they're not going to get butt naked in a public place. That doesn't mean, you know what? I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's a James Bond movie. It's intentionally ambiguous. Usually in James Bond movies, when it's ambiguous, I generally choose to believe that there's sex, but
Fair enough. But with this
Fine.
character, with Kara, he's more, I feel like, more innocent than a lot of Bond girls. And
yeah, you could say that again.
I feel like he doesn't seem like this is the first time they've even kissed in the movie, even it's almost an hour in.
She's still technically with Georgie.
Yorgi.
Yeah. Can I say Georgie and we'll just say that's the American pronunciation?
Nope.
Okay, can I write it down? What do you say it
Yorgi.
again?
Yorgi.
Okay. Back at the cafe, Saunders is waiting for
Mhm.
them. And I noticed in the cafe there's a big Carlsberg beer sign, which warmed my little heart. Because when
Oh.
I've gone traveling to places like Israel and New Zealand, I used to
Uh-huh.
drink Carlsberg. Because
Okay.
it's kind of similar to like Bud Light or Sam Adams.
Okay.
Like it's not good beer per se, but it's like
Uh-huh.
acceptable.
Which is a shame because in Vienna there are great beers, and there was one in particular that was everywhere, but I never took a photo of it, and I don't know what it was called.
Well, I haven't been to Vienna. It's a bit of a sore subject because Christian already knows this, but for those of you who haven't, in early 2020, I went on a trip to
Oh,
Berlin and Prague, and I was
right.
supposed to go to Vienna when they
That's
shut
right.
the border, and we had
Right,
to
you
take a 4
were
a.m.
basically
flight home.
following me because I had just been to Prague and Vienna.
But you
Like,
actually
I
made
got
it
out
there.
right before the border closed. Yeah, well, you should go back and visit some of these locations because not only are they really cool Bond locations, but they're like the Schönbrunn Palace is full of history too.
Yeah, I mean, Vienna is just a cool city in
Yeah.
general.
Bond goes to meet with Saunders. Kara goes into a gift shop, which I didn't realize. I was like, oh yeah, I actually went into that exact same gift shop.
Wow, that's funny. That hasn't changed in 40 years.
Not really, not much, no.
I also wanted to comment that Bond intentionally kept Saunders waiting. So he's being a little bit of a dick, which is
Yeah.
very consistent with James Bond, especially when people are dicks to him, which Saunders totally was.
Yep.
But it's also a little bit of a power play to be like, I'm the
Yeah.
one in charge here.
To be fair, he was just doing what Kara asked. She's the one who wanted to go on the wheel.
She didn't ask to stop and make out on the wheel.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, no. Saunders tells him that the cello was bought at auction by Brad Whitaker. So this is the first time that Bond can connect Whitaker and Koskov.
Right.
And
So their
yes.
mission is they have to find Whitaker now.
hmm And so they get the passport for Kara. There seems to be some thawing of the ice between Saunders and Bond. Bond, thanks him, and Saunders realizes, all right, Bond, you're actually on to something. Go find out what's going on. Saunders gets killed by a sliding door.
This was really stupid. I'm sorry.
And we had seen Necros outside the cafe earlier. He had opened up the mechanism for the sliding door and had a bomb placed there so that I guess the safety would be turned off and it would slam right into Saunders fast
Yeah.
enough that it breaks the glass.
and presumably kills him.
Yeah.
Again, if this were like a Naked Gun or Top Secret kind of movie, it'd be kind of funny if he stepped through it and the door slam. He's just like, "Ow, that hurt.
Okay.
What the heck?" But he's like totally fine.
And as Bond is looking at his body, the balloon comes over that has Smiert Spionum written
Right.
on it.
And he pops it in anger, which I thought was unintentionally funny.
Bond remembers seeing a balloon guy near Saunders as he was going up in the wheel. There's a hedge, and he sees some balloons over it. He like jumps over the hedge and almost shoots a kid.
Fortunately, doesn't.
Yeah. And Kara's like, "You hear a message? Oh yes, Yorgi is with Whitaker, and so we go to Tangiers now."
They certainly have the globetrotting part of James Bond down.
Yeah. So in Tangier, Bond is surveilling Pushkin. Pushkin goes to his hotel room to see his girlfriend, and Bond is in the room. As we get some more plot revelation, we find out that, again, for the audience, that Yorgi is not working for the Russians and that he's doing some sort of deal with Brad Whitaker.
That's right, but he needs Pushkin out of the way for it to happen.
Yep. As this happens, Pushkin activates his tracker on his watch. So the guard comes in, Bond strips the girlfriend to be a distraction for the guard and then knocks out the guard.
Okay,
This
can
was-
we talk
No. We're going to
this?
talk about it. Don't worry. I'm not going to skip
Okay.
over it. I just want to get that.
Okay.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Well, it was really weird also, because James Bond movies don't usually have nudity in them. And I would believe it for something like License to Kill, which is supposed to be like a hardcore movie for hardcore people. But not so much this one.
I mean, like this one, like I said, again, they're trying to find that balance, and they didn't always find the tonal balance there.
I did like that Pushkin had a secret watch. I always like it when bad guys have gadgets too.
Well,
As I
is he a bad
mentioned.
guy?
That's fair. He seems like a bad guy at the time, though.
Yeah, he gets Pushkin down on his knees and is like Pushkin says, we won't know what their Koskov is planning if Pushkin's still alive. And so you think that's it, that he's going to be dead. But then
Yeah.
the very next scene, Pushkin appears on a stage at that conference.
I was proud of myself that I figured out what they were doing here.
I mean, this one's fairly obvious.
Still, let me have this.
Okay, all right. We see a dead body next to a spotlight, and we find that Necros has killed the guy, and he's watching as, Pushkin makes his speech, and then Bond shoots Pushkin. Necros is kind of stunned, but then he goes and turns the spotlight over towards Bond. Bond shoots out the spotlight and then runs.
hmm
Then we get a rooftop chase, which someone out there, please re-edit this chase to one jump from Aladdin. And we see Pushkin taken backstage on a stretcher. And then I love how his girlfriend is like crying over his body, and then Pushkin like just opens its like one bulging eye and is like, and then like the girlfriend is like shocked.
Oh yeah, I guess they didn't let her in. Are you sure?
No.
By the way, are you sure that she's his girlfriend? I thought she was his wife.
I guess I can talk about this now. So initially, this role was supposed to be General Gogol, the head of the KGB in movies dating back to Spy Who Loved Me, I believe. But his actor was in such poor health, they had to, rewrite it as his successor and have him in a minor role. But there was a recurring character who was his like mistress girlfriend, and this would have been her.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That would have been a little bit cleaner storytelling wise.
Yeah.
But you do what you gotta do.
Anyway, so this is where we get Bond walking on the street. He steals a pair of sunglasses,
Mm-hmm.
and then we hear the sexy saxophone music.
Very 80s.
And these two girls come up to him saying, "Looking for a party?"
Yeah.
Flashback briefly to Pushkin. We find out he had like a bulletproof vest on and blood pack.
Yeah, I think they call them squibs in today's day and age.
And now squibs are exploding packets, so they'll explode
That's not what
themselves.
it was. Oh,
No, this was a blood pack, so that if it gets hit, then the blood explodes, as opposed to having explosion come with the.
Right. So Bond was actually hitting him with bullets.
Yep. Oh no, he was
In other
really
words.
hitting him with bullets. One of my favorite quotes later. We'll save that.
Okay. So one thing about the assassins,
Yeah.
well, they're not assassins. The girls, I thought
The
they were
agents?
assassins.
Yeah.
Whatever they were. I do think it's kind of funny that Bond doesn't see anything suspicious about strange women asking him if they want to
Want to
get
go
in
for
his
a ride?
car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or looking for
her
a
car.
party? Yeah. So they saying, let me off here, and one of them has a gun in his back, and so they take him to the yacht we saw before. It's Felix Leiter.
Somebody's like, is the party still on then? Or maybe that was me
So-
watching the movie.
One of the girls said that. So the Bond movie, because they've recast Felix Leiter so many times that I feel like every time they intro a new well, no, let's see. Here, I know Doctor No and in Thunderball and here, anytime they intro a lot of times when they intro a new Felix or any Felix really, they have this scene where you think he's going to be a bad guy, then it's revealed it's Felix later.
That's funny. I didn't realize that.
Again, we get a little plot dump here. Tells Felix that it's a frame job, that that Pushkin's actually alive, and that they're just trying to figure out what's going on with Koskov. Kara is practicing her cello. I'm gonna critique her cello technique here a little bit. So she's got the flat of the bow like on the string instead of the angle, which I'm like, okay, she's definitely not a real cellist. And then she has her fingers across it like if you were playing a guitar, whereas with a cello, it's really about the fingertips that you need.
Yeah, I could see that. You'd think it'd be easier to find a cello player and teach them to act rather than vice versa.
Maybe.
Especially
I don't know.
when a lot of those early Bond girls were models, not actors. So you'd think they'd be used to it.
She was an actress, actually. So fun. She actually was an actress, but she was also, they used her a lot, I think probably in the Roger Moore era, as a stand-in for when they were casting people. And so she would sit in to read lines with them, and then ended up, oh wait, no, you can do this. We'll have cast you as the main Bond girl.
Because this goes to show if you're patient, sometimes things pay off.
Yeah. But she was practicing her cello. Apparently Bond did not tell her where he went.
Come on.
So she's been worried all day, what happened to him. And she has a drink for him ready, and she shakes the martini shaker, which made me think, all right, how long has she been waiting? How long have those been ready? How is the ice not melted already?
It must have been some kind of cooling.
No, it was just right out there.
Is this out there?
Yeah. Bond tells her the truth that Koskov betrayed everyone, that he's not actually Koskov's friend, but he's a British agent, and that Koskov wanted her dead because if Bond had done his job correctly, he would have killed her, and then she would not be there to, reveal his plot.
She was a loose end, and I guess he stole his one.
Yeah. But she reveals that, no, that's not, I don't believe you at all because I called Brad Whitaker, so she's the one who made the phone call. She said that Bond was a KGB agent sent to kill her.
Sure, why not?
And we find out that there's a chlorohydrate in the martini, which poisons him. And then he reveals that he was the one sent to kill her by, showing where she got hurt by the gun when it flew out of her hands. And Nekros and Koskov come and take them away on a plane.
Yes. And once they're on the plane, Kara switches sides again.
There's a medical flight. Kara's dressed up as a nurse. We find, to get past customs, they reveal that there's a human transplant box with a heart in it.
Which it's a little extra, as you might say.
Kara wakes up on the flight. Carolyn noticed that the box says handle like eggs on it.
Hey, that's a good description. What does handle with care mean? How much care, really? Some people care a lot. Some people don't care so much. She did a little
research on that because I was like, I think it's a Britishism, but I know it's been in Bond movies before. So she did some research, and apparently it dates back to Thunderball. There's something which says handle like eggs there. But it may be something that the British military has used, but that it's a little unclear.
So you only see it in James Bond movies?
That's where I've seen it, basically.
Nuclear bomb, handle like eggs.
Pretty much. But yeah, so Bond looks at the heart. Carol realizes she's been played. It's revealed that the heart that's in there, that's still beating, it's not actually a human heart, it's an animal heart. And what the purpose of it is they're smuggling the diamonds in the ice.
Yeah, that's why they call it ice.
So this box, once upon a time when the Spy Museum had their big James Bond exhibit, that box was with the heart, and I remember it being open, was in the Spy Museum in one of their exhibits, and I have photos of it. I can't find them now, but before we post this, I will find them and post those photos.
Of all the things from a James Bond movie you would want to save, I would not have thought of that.
Hey, it's a cool prop.
I mean, it's interesting, but there's a lot of cool props in the James Bond movies.
And then they had many of the Spy Museum. That was just one of them. Koskov is going to turn Bond in for the murder of General Pushkin.
That was something I was wondering about.
Yes.
Is why is Bond still alive? And the answer is so they can frame him.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of tricky for villains who I don't really like very much.
Koskov will claim that he's been on a secret mission for Pushkin, spreading disinformation to the British intelligence. And so they arrive. Where do they arrive, Zach?
Did they arrive in Afghanistan?
Yep, which is why I wanted this movie after
Charlie Wilson.
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah, and are the final leg of our globe-trotting trip around the world.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so they arrive in Afghanistan. They give the Kara and Bond over to the Russians. Kara has palmed Bond's keys, so now she has them in her possession.
Yeah, so I wanted to say Yorgi betrays Kara too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's just double crosses all over the place.
Hmm. I mean,
And,
she is still a loose end, so he needs to get rid of her.
yeah, there's a plane. You could throw her out of the plane, dude. Come on. Is this your first day of supervillainy? I also
Yeah.
have something about a defector claim. I don't remember what the context is for that.
Claiming that Kara is a defector.
Oh, that's why the Russians are willing to arrest her.
Yep.
Yep.
So they're put into a prison in Afghanistan by the Russians. There's another
Yes.
prisoner there.
He looks like Jason Mantzoukas.
He kind of does. I never connected that. That's funny. But yeah, so at one point, Kara drops the keys when Bond gets it. But then they beat up Bond a bit, and the guards take the keys. Bond whistles, activates the gas, and there's the other prisoner helps, and they get the guards into the cell, and they let that other prisoner out and put on some Russian jackets and watch them as they're like transporting the diamonds.
Yeah, there's kind of a long exfiltration part. And there's also a part where there's blood on someone's arm. I know James Bond movies usually have blood, but not a lot.
Oh, it's when they slam the door, like his arm in
door.
In the prison cell door. Yep, I never saw that too.
But eventually they escape and they meet the Taliban.
The Mujahideen.
Chuckle, chuckle.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they get captured, but the other prisoner saves them from being killed, and they're taken back to the base. Find out that the prisoner's name is Kamran Shah.
Yeah, he cleaned up really good. He doesn't look like Jason Mantzoukas anymore.
And now he has a British accent.
Well, of course he does. It is a James Bond movie.
Yeah. So Bond tells him what the plot is and says that he needs to get back to the airbase. It's possible to bring you directly there, but, come on this mission with us first, and then we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I liked how these guys had their own agenda, and they're willing to help out, but not that much.
Yeah. They've got some stuff going on over there, if you can remember.
Right. Yeah, it feels like a living world. There's also a part where he says, "I won't wait for you," to Bond. I'm like, don't threaten me with a good time.
Kara and Bond are reunited. Bond says he's going to go with Kamran on the mission, and Kara's going to stay there. Kara's mad at him.
Yep.
But they make up and make out.
As you do. I guess she's single now. So what are you waiting for?
Which is another reason why I don't think they had sex on the Ferris wheel.
Okay. Think what you like.
Kara ends up coming with them. And so they're doing a deal with the Snow Leopard Brotherhood, who are some of the biggest opium dealers in the region. And they're dealing to the Russians. And we see that Koskov's actually there. Bond realizes that Koskov is going to buy the drugs with the diamonds, but then he's going to make a profit after he sells the drugs and use that profit to buy the weapon.
That's right.
So he will be able to do all that. So basically, he's double dealing, and he's going to end up with some profit even after the initial deal of buying the weapons.
Yeah, it's a bit of a complicated plan. Let's see how it works out for him.
So Bond tells Cameron this and then says, he's going to buy weapons to use against you. He's like, okay, we'll help, but, we can't cross the Snow Leopard Brotherhood, so we'll help you after the Russians pay them.
Makes sense to me.
So he gives Bond a plastic explosive and goes right past Necros, who does not spot him.
Yeah, it's a close call.
So he's loading the truck up with all the opium, sneaks in the truck, and they drive away with Bond in it. Kara, she grabs his AK-47, runs off on the horseback to go help Bond.
My note for this is Kara emasculates the Shah and shames him into helping.
Yep, pretty much.
Or I guess just Shah, not the Shah. That's somebody else.
Yeah.
So that's the only time she does something cool in this movie, IMO.
No.
Okay. I didn't think very highly of Kara, sorry. Or Kara.
Ooh.
Whatever.
So, Bond empties out one of the bags that has the opium in it and puts C4 in it, bringing all the trucks to a cargo plane. Bond sneaks out and Cameron...
Yeah, this is the problem with outsourcing all of your manual labor. It's like you're saying the evil overlord list. Where you have a bunch of guys who you don't know, it makes them easy to infiltrate. I also foresaw that once he put the bomb into one of those bags, that he was going to have trouble finding it again. Which is a Sharpie is a very useful thing for super spies to carry around because he just could have marked it.
Cameron and Kara sneak closer to the plane, and Bond sets a timer on the bomb. But as he's doing that, his face covering fell down. Then Necros and Koskov spot him. So he grabs a gun, shoots at them.
I did like how the plane doesn't go perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
That he screws up and has to recover from it.
Mm-hmm. Koskov is very insistent. Don't shoot at the plane because you'll destroy the plane, and then we can't get all the dope out of here.
Yeah, that one line basically explains all the really bad decisions the bad guys make over the next 20 minutes.
Cameron and his men charge. Bond gets into the cockpit, starts the plane, part where the plane can't move over a brake pad, and Koskov at one point tries to get on, runs onto the plane, and try to get into a door, but fails.
Yeah, he can't catch a very slow-moving plane. What a great, scary James Bond villain.
So here's the plane is probably moving 30, 40 miles an hour when it starts to get moving.
It is true that it's hard to say how fast it's going just by looking at it.
Yeah. I was reading, it was actually an article on Die Another Day when it came out about how there's a scene where him and Pierce and Halle Berry have to run to get onto this plane. And it's going 30, 40 miles. And when it's starting to take off, basically. And it doesn't look like it's that fast, but when you try to get to run up to speed to it, it takes a lot. And they managed to do it, but they had to do a few takes.
Okay.
I know you don't like Yorgi, but I'm just in his defense.
It just didn't look like it was going fast the way it was filmed. So it's just funny.
All right.
Other observations from this big fight. There's a part where the Taliban use a front end loader as a weapon to smash through the wall. So that was cool.
And then when there's an explosion, Kara falls off her horse. And I was worried that was going to be it for her. And then we see her getting a Jeep and chasing after Bond.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So who was it who dies on the fuel truck? Is it Yorgi?
No.
Yeah, so this random Russian general climbs into a fuel truck, sits there, and then blows up.
So he was there to try to block the runway.
Okay, because I was what was his plan?
That was it, because Yorgi shouts, block the runway so he can't get out. And so he goes and does that. I think that was his friend who greeted him earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron and the Mujahideen, blow that up so that Bond can go through.
It turns into Fast and Furious 6.
But much faster. This is not the world's longest runway here.
Yeah, it's only the world's second longest runway.
No, so Bond's trying to take off, lowers the cargo bay doors. Kara drives in, but Necros also jumps in. Kara distracts Bond as he's trying to fly the plane, and
I do think this part is kind of dumb. This is an air base. They don't have fighter jets around to force Bond to land. The line about don't shoot the plane because you might blow up the plane and then all of our money will be gone is okay, that's fine. I don't love it, but it's acceptable. But the idea
is not the air base, though.
I thought it was.
Well, actually, I don't know. It's unclear where this. You're probably right. This is probably the air base. Now that
it's got to be at least an air base, if not the air base.
Right.
No. I guess what I'm saying is stealing the plane was a little too easy. I didn't love that part.
All right. Bond puts Kara in the pilot's seat and goes to look for the bomb to deactivate it. He doesn't find it, but finds Necros, who attacks him.
Right.
Kara gets the bright idea to open the cargo bay door, and Necros and Bond fall out and grab onto the netting, which is holding all of the opium.
Yeah, this was a great stunt.
Oh, yeah. No, and they did this for real. Well, not with Timothy Dalton and not with Necros, but with stunt doubles. But they did that for real. So those are real men hanging out the back on the webbing, which is impressive.
Yeah, it looks really real. And then the part where the opium comes flying out, that looked really good too. So I was impressed by this scene.
At one point, Necros is only hanging on by Bond's boots, so Bond takes his boot off.
I didn't like this part. I thought it was kind of stupid. Because he's holding on to the boot, but right next to him is a net. So he could just kind of moved his hand over.
Yeah, but he wasn't thinking in that moment.
Well, there you go.
Goes back in, finds the bomb, stops it with 2 seconds left, but sees the fighting below and sees that Cameron and his men are being chased by the Russians. So Bond drops the bomb on one of the 2 tanks that is chasing them and blows the bridge up. And Cameron and his men celebrate. Yeah,
they were these 2 mini tanks that were very cute and adorable tanks. But the bridge looked really good, the way it was filmed. This was really good. I also have a note that he disarmed the bomb very easily. There was no cutting the red wire. He just reaches in and clicks it and turns it off.
He said it sort of in a hurry. It was just a detonator with C4. It's not a nuclear bomb, which has, multiple wires and all that sort of stuff that you need.
Well, at least in the movies. I don't know about real life.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I buy it because you can say it's supposed to be hidden. The hiding is what's protecting it.
Yeah.
Counting on them not finding it.
Yep.
So it didn't bother me too much. I just thought it was a little funny that he's like, the bomb, there's 3 seconds left. Click. Okay,
Mhm.
good.
Actually, go back to Goldfinger. How did they
Yes.
disarm the bomb? Just a button.
What about the one where he has to slowly lift it out? Was
That
that
is-
not Goldfinger?
No, that is Spy Who Loved Me.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was thinking of.
In all of this excitement, seems like one of the fuel tanks has gotten hit on the big plane. And so you see
Yes.
the engines slowly die and like sputter out, and now they're just coasting.
A character going on a plane through a gunfight without getting hit once is like a character running through a bunch of zombies without getting bit once. Like, it's stupid, and I'm glad when they actually suffer some consequences for being in the middle of a gunfight.
Okay. They get in the Jeep. Bond lowers the cargo bay doors. There's no place to land. They activate the chute on on the contraption that they're on. Slide out the back. Plane crashes in the background as they drive off to Karachi, where Bond knows a great place to eat.
Yeah, this was all really good. Like, getting out of the plane, watching the plane crash. R.I.P. plane. We've been through so much together.
In the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, and then they flee for the border,
Yep.
which is also a spy movie trope.
Bond is going into Whitaker's compound to take him down. Felix is helping him. Whitaker's over in his game room. He's playing out some different military conflicts. Currently playing Gettysburg.
Yeah, he's basically saying, like, if I was the general, I could have won
Mhm.
Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Seems like he's, like, unhinged
Oh yeah.
at this point.
We didn't talk about them earlier, but like underneath his like little game tables, he has like sliding shelves that have all the guns in them. So he like uses one and like surprises Bond, and then uses another to get gun out. They have a nice callback to Dr. No, where he says, "You've had your 8. Let me have my 80," and it has like this giant machine gun.
It's definitely a callback to Dr. No. It's not just a coincidence.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've had your 6. Yeah.
We know that because we're James Bond super fans, but I don't know if the writers were intentionally doing that, but I will
Yes,
take your
the
word for it
writers
that they were.
were.
Okay, they
Come
know
on.
what they're doing. So yeah, he basically is like a science fiction supervillain here. He's got his killer robot. He's got this science fiction looking gun.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like this scene.
Yeah, it's fine. I
Sorry.
mean, it was over quickly. So, well, how does he defeat
Mm.
him? Bond puts the keyring finder on a statue of Wellington and does a wolf whistle. Whitaker's right in front of it, so explodes and falls on Whitaker.
And he's dead.
Yep.
Dead. And don't ask why he shows up again in GoldenEye.
Different character.
Obviously, yes.
So Pushkin arrives with the KGB. They found Koskov. Georgie's like, yes, of course. Send him on the first plane to Moscow in the diplomatic bag.
Yeah, I don't understand what that meant.
Means put him in a body bag.
Oh, okay. I wasn't familiar with the term diplomatic bag. Because there's like bags that hold like documents. So I was like, the idea is like they like chop him up and put him in a bag.
Basically.
Okay. Maybe they could have phrased it as like send it back to Moscow in pieces. I don't know. Just so I would have understood it.
Uh-huh. But Bond and Pushkin realize, what about Kara? So we next go back to Schönbrunn Palace, where Kara is playing cello. Conductor here, I'm not going to ask if you recognize him, because most people wouldn't know what he looks like. But that's John Barry, who composed a lot of the music for the James Bond films. This was actually his last James Bond film that he composed the music for.
Well, it's nice that he was able to be in front of the camera for a change.
Yeah. And I'm going to criticize her playing again. Like,
Mhm.
you can tell when it's her and then when it's not her. As
Mhm.
a former cellist, I can tell. It's like, oh, yeah, that's definitely her, and she's not, her finger placement's not great. Oh, that's definitely an actual cellist when they do the close-ups of the hands, yes.
Very jarring change.
So Emma's there. She meets General Gogol, who I've talked about, previously. But apparently he's now working with the Foreign Service instead of the KGB, and has arranged an immigration visa for Kara, so she can come and go as she likes.
Yay.
And then Cameron and his men arrive. They missed their performance because they had some trouble at the airport, and like his 2 men are wearing like bandoliers with bullets in them.
This is great.
Joke
I love that.
Would not play well.
I love the Afghans coming back. That was so funny.
But we find out that Bond is actually on assignment, so he had to miss the performance. So she goes to her dressing room. She hears a whistle, keyring finder going off. Bond pops out from behind one of those dressing screens and said, you didn't think I was going to miss this performance, did you?
Mm-hmm.
And then they kiss and ends with a, oh, James.
Okay, now can we talk about Kara? I've been waiting the whole movie.
Okay, what?
Well, so we talked to Sarah about how James Bond girls are often very like passive and they're like sex objects, and they're often kind of dumb. And I feel like Kara is like the epitome of that.
Well, no. You take that back. She is not dumb. She's just out of her element.
Well, a little column A, a little
And
bit.
I don't
column
think
B.
I didn't see her as a sex object here. Like she gets none of the gratuitous outfits that a lot of Bond girls do.
By the way, I'm glad you brought that up. What's up with the poster? The Living Daylights poster is her backside wearing this super sexy dress, and she never even wears it in the movie.
Well, that's not actually her.
I'm sure that it's not, but the implication is that it would be. Can't believe a movie poster would lie to me. What is this world coming to? No, but anyway, so like Kara, okay, fine. She's not dumb, but she doesn't do very much doesn't do much of anything in the movie. She just basically does what Bond tells her to do. The only time she doesn't is when she grabs the AK-47 and is like charging in.
Hmm.
That's it.
I thought she was a fun character, and I just like her in there, and just being basically, an every person being thrust into this world of super spies and all that sort of stuff.
Glad you like that part, but that's almost every Bond girl. It's just unfortunate timing that it comes so soon after our James Bond Day draft conversation. She ain't Halle Berry, is what I'm getting at.
Hold up. No. Halle Berry is a terrible Bond girl.
Yeah, but she's she fights and she can do stuff and she makes her own way in the world. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, so maybe I'm remembering it wrong. I guess what I'm saying is Kara's not another secret agent.
Not every Bond girl has to be another secret agent. You can have a strong female character without having them be another spy.
That's true. So you think Kara's a strong female character?
I don't know that I see her as a strong female. I mean, I see her actually having a character, unlike some Bond girls.
That's fair. I would not say she's like top 10. You could do much worse. That's true.
Okay, so that is a big shift from saying that she's the primo example of the terrible Bond girl.
Yeah, she's not the primo example. I take that back. That's
okay.
Fine.
All right.
So now it is time to get into fact versus fiction. I have a little bit if you want me to go.
What do you have? Yeah, go first.
So I found this pamphlet called Mujahideen Tactics in the Soviet-Afghan War from the Conflict Studies Research Center by a man, I presume a man, named C.J. Dick. And he says that the purpose of raids on security outposts were to undermine enemy morale, but mostly they were to get arms and ammunition for the guerrillas. They used scores to a few hundreds of fighters rather than a dozen or so used by special forces. This was due to the need for manpower to carry off spoils and casualties. Late afternoon, and more commonly night, was the time of choice because darkness inhibited enemy reactions and made air support ineffectual. So I feel like if this movie were more realistic, that big final battle would have taken place at night.
Yes, but would they be doing a drug deal at night like that?
Well, I understand they explained it by we have to attack now before we run out of time. The problem that the Mujahideen ran into was the Soviets would use minefields against them, which you may remember from Charlie Wilson. They had no mine detection capabilities. They also had no radio communications that made it hard to coordinate. And then when Nightfire raids did take place, it usually involved the bombardment of outposts as well as airfields with rockets, mortars, anti-tank weapons, and howitzers. This happened almost daily. So I guess guys riding on horses was not so common, and that is what I have.
Okay. So what I've got first, I've got about the pipeline. So the Trans-Siberian Pipeline, also known as the, let's see if I get how my Russian pronunciation, Urengoy Pomari Uzhhorod Pipeline, is a real pipeline, and it's one of Russia's main natural gas export pipelines. It's partially owned and operated by the Ukraine. It's first proposed in 1978 and was actually constructed between 1982 to 1984. So this would be a fairly recent development at the time 1987 was filmed.
Yeah, seriously. So people would be like, oh yeah, I'm not familiar with that. Maybe it could totally do that.
Yeah. So Stradivarius. So there are a number of different Stradivarius instruments, violins, violas, cellos, and they're either built by members of the Italian Farius Stradivari, particularly Antonio Stradivari. I don't believe there is actually cello that's known as the Lady Rose.
Do they have names though?
They do have names, yes. Let's see. For example, there's one that's named, these are violins. Actually, let's look for the list of cellos. The Marylebone, the Medici, Barjansky, Bonjour. Yes, they all have names.
Okay.
There's one that's named Amaryllis Fleming. who is a cousin, oh no, half sister to Ian Fleming.
Oh, that's fun.
Wow,
Yeah, all these famous Flemings.
Smersh, or Smedet Spionem, so also known as Smersh, and was started by Stalin, I believe, but it was only active between 1942 to 1946, so was not active in the timeline of the actual James Bond novels in which it featured in, which included Casino Royale, up through, I think, about Live and Let Die or so, until maybe about Goldfinger. No, Goldfinger, I think, was the last one that featured it, because in the novel Goldfinger is actually the treasurer of Smersh.
Huh.
Yeah.
I guess the legend will live forever, though.
Yes. So it was only active during that point. Either they were basically the Soviet counterintelligence. Finally, so I did look up, because I was like, there's no way that that's actually how you transport a heart. But there is a thing called a heart in a box, which is basically how they use a similar technology where they will have the heart and it will be beating, and it will be stored in ice. And it's kind of weird, but that is a similar, not exactly that, but how they transport a heart.
I think they would have at least had some plastic over the heart or something.
So they do. When I find those photos, it's not just, there is plastic over where the heart is. It's not just fully exposed to the elements. Like it looks like. Yeah. Here, I'll drop this in the chat, and maybe we'll show this off to our
social media.
To our social media, but
yeah, it looks much more sci-fi-y though.
All right, finally. So like I said at the beginning, I did read the short story, which this was based on. Basically, what it takes part is the part where they're bringing someone over, and so he's acting as a counter sniper.
Okay, that's the only similarity.
It's pretty much a pretty accurate depiction of that entire part. So it actually takes place over like a 3-day period instead of just however many minutes. And so Bond is told that they're sending this Agent 272 across the border, actually, and it's set in Berlin, and right where Checkpoint Charlie will be a year later. So it's a year before that, apparently. And so there's someone who's going to be coming across, and there is a orchestra performance like across the border, and he sees a girl with a cello, and because he's so bored, just waiting for every day from sundown until sunup person to come across, that he makes up this fiction in his mind about who this cellist must be, and basically falls in love with this girl just by seeing her. And then on the third day, 272 is coming across, and they spot the rifle coming out. And in this case, it's an AK-47 that the sniper is using. And then he sees that it's the girl with the cello. Or it's in the movie. He doesn't actually shoot her in the head. He adjusts his aims and shoots the gun out of her
I thought it was
hand.
going to be like some kind of tragedy where he has to shoot her, and then he's like, no, what we could have been.
He does, but then he actually even has this melancholy about leaving the little apartment that he'd been stationed in this whole time with. The character's name is not Saunders in the book, it's Senders. I don't know why they changed it to that subtle difference.
Maybe because Senders is not a name that people have.
Yeah. But Senders is also very snooty and all this sort of stuff. So, and he gives a pretty much identical speech about, you go ahead and tell whoever that I did that, and if they fire me, that, and then the drop the line of, whoever it was must have scared the living daylights out of them.
There you go.
That whole part is pretty accurate to the novel. Added a bunch of other stuff, but I like that they didn't. And actually, they make a mention of Amaryllis Fleming in the book as well.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's what I've got for Spy Fact vs. Fiction.
All right, so now it's time for our favorite quotes. I guess I will go first.
All right.
So I liked Better Make That 2 hours.
Okay.
Also, just the way he said it. He said it better than I did.
Yeah.
Also, later he says, I only kill professionals. Which I was like, is that true? Then I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I think it is true. I don't think he's ever killed somebody. I feel like he's probably killed henchmen, but I guess they qualify as. And then there's a part where we see his ID, which is Jersey Bondon.
I saw that. Yeah.
My absolute favorite line, and I'm glad you didn't say it while we were doing our recap, is he kills Necros and he runs in to the cockpit and she says, what happened to Necros? And then he says, he got the boot. So first of all, that's a solid pun. But also, you can tell it's ADR'd because Timothy Dalton's mouth does not move.
I missed that. I didn't see that. Okay.
Well, it's also because he's jumping towards the cockpit because he sees they're about to crash into the mountain at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's very obvious that he didn't actually say it.
Okay. I like a lot of the ones where he's explaining to Kara, like, oh, how can my car do all this? It was like, amazing, this modern safety glass. Or I've had a few optional extras installed. I also like from Yorgi when Bond brought all the food. He's like, as the Russians say, hearts and stomachs good comrades make.
Now that's solid wisdom for you.
And let's see. I also like from Pushkin after he's like showing off all the blood packs. He's like, this is the first time I'm glad James Bond is a good shot.
Yeah, so what else who knows who James Bond is?
And finally, so you did part of this, but it's the whole little speech that he does at the end of that sequence, which is from the books. He says, stuff my orders. I only kill professionals. Girl didn't know one end of the rifle from the other. Go ahead and tell him whatever you want. If he fires me, I'll thank him for it. Whoever she was, it must have scared the living daylights out of her.
Wow, that was kind of hardcore for Bond. Usually he doesn't threaten to quit.
Dalton loves the novels, and in the novels, Bond is almost always on the edge of quitting because he's just so tired of that life, basically.
Okay. Well, I could see that. It didn't totally translate into this movie, but that moment was a good one. All right, so now it's time for our ratings on a scale of 1 to 10 martinis, 10 being a great hypothetical spy movie and 1 being The Avengers 1998. How would we rate The Living Daylights? I can go first.
Sure.
So as you may have determined from our recap, I didn't think this movie was bad, but I didn't think it was especially good either. I thought the bad guys were pretty poor. They weren't particularly interesting. Kara didn't do that much for me. Timothy Dalton did okay. Oh, also, there was some racism that I forgot to mention under my favorite quotes. There's a part where someone says, we'll save you for the harem, aka the harem, to Kara.
Was Dalton, yes.
Yes. The buttock slapping, the chases were good, but that final thing with the plane, aside from the stunt, I know, it was all ended up being okay, so I will give it 5 out of 10 martinis.
Okay, all right. And as you could probably tell from our review, I had much a more fun time than Zach did for this. So I had to look at what I rated The License to Kill, because I definitely enjoy this movie more than License to Kill. I don't know that I enjoy it when I do enjoy it probably a bit more than I enjoy Dr. No, because I really like Timothy Dalton as a Bond. I think he may not have gotten the best scripts, but he was able to bring some of that Fleming character, which I've read all the books, and I was about the time after I'd finished all of the books that I watched his for the first time, and I was like, oh, he's really trying to bring that Fleming-esque character to his performance, even though some of his scenarios and plots are still the goofier kind of thing. So I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. That's probably added to by the fact that I visit some of these locations. So when I have memories attached to these locations, I see them, and I do enjoy Kara as a Bond girl.
And the cello, that helped too.
Yes, I'm sure it did, yes.
Yeah, the bad guy from License to Kill, now he had style.
Okay, yeah, no, I'll give you that.
I liked him.
Okay, well, thank you all for listening, and you can find us as always on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys, signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at The Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.